Hello there, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I hope everyone had an amazing weekend. And welcome back to the Purple Breakdown, a podcast covering the Baltimore Ravens and the events surrounding them. I am your host, Alex, and I'm excited to be back for episode 6. I've been having an amazing time making this podcast so far, and I know I'm a little later into the week releasing this one, but I'm excited to be back here and get back to talking about and discussing the Baltimore Ravens and what's going on with them. I'd first like to start off real quick by saying congratulations to the Miami Redhawks. I am a former Miami of Ohio alum, and I'm thrilled to see them beat Kent State last night to make them 20-0 undefeated. It's an amazing time watching them, but I will say they stress me out. My blood pressure goes up here because of them, because of these last few games that have been so close and going into overtime. It's been a little ridiculous that way, but I'm so happy for them, and I wish them continued success in how they play and going out there and winning. I know they're making everyone from Miami and who went to Miami very proud. But we're here to discuss the Baltimore Ravens, and there is some news and updates on them. So first off, Coach Carousel, it's still continuing. I think it's gotten a little harder now that the Bills have just recently fired Sean McDermott. I know I'm a little behind that. Again, I was a little busy this weekend. My girlfriend came here and I had an amazing time with her, and I didn't want to touch any of that while she was here because I just wanted to spend my time with her. But the Bills fired Sean McDermott after how they lost in the playoff. He's out. And the Bills are a really attractive spot, just like the Ravens, if you want to go be a head coach, because they have the pieces in place there to go on and continue and win a Super Bowl, possibly. Now, am I going to say that I think they're the best spot? No, I still think the Ravens are the best spot to go. But it's another piece of competition to go into over who the Ravens are looking to hire a head coach. It's just another target that people can look to go to and possibly take a head coach that the Ravens really want. 9 teams so far have fired their head coaches this season, so there's a lot of coaches moving around, 3 alone in the AFC North. And it's interesting to watch the Ravens sit back and watch what's going on. I believe 3 head coaches have been hired so far as of now, Tennessee being one and the Giants another. I forget who the last one is, but the Ravens are sitting back and watching this. And now I know in a few weeks, last week, after the press conference, I adjust that Eric DeCosta said that they conduct their head coaching interview a lot like how they conduct a draft. And that it would be like a 3-week draft. It may be a little longer than this now. I mean, people are just starting to come in for second interviews, in-person interviews. Jesse Minter, Anthony Weaver, Joe Brady, they're coming in, and multiple other people have been interviewed too for the first time for head coach. I believe the DC for the Jags, and Chris Sula, and I think 2 others have been brought in so far, like Darren Ritzie. So the Ravens are continuing to cast out their net and search and look, but they're sitting back and they're waiting and they're letting other teams pick first, and they're sort of waiting now. I wonder if there's a certain person they're waiting on, and if it's not a certain person, it may just be we can take our time with this. There's several people that are very close that we're looking at that are very close in their level of how the Ravens organization views them. And so it's a close competition, and they're just trying to differentiate. But you got to look at some big teams now, like the Bills, and with the Bills looking for a head coach, who's going to go that way? I'm a little surprised to not see Brian Flores come in for a second interview yet. I was really hoping that Flores would get a second interview. I believe as of now, Jesse Minter is the number one in odds to become the Ravens' next head coach. But I still think my number one, not just think, my number one is still Brian Flores. I think he could do the most to help fix this team. I mean, Kyle Van Noy, even though Kyle Van Noy may not be on the team this next year, he expressed his opinion on who he thought the next Ravens head coach should be, and he talked about a guy that could bring the team to the next level, and that they have to know the X's and O's and get the most out of every single player that they can get. And I'm looking at lots of the head coaches that the Ravens are interviewing. I think that's all they're trying to target. Is they're trying to target somebody that can build off what Harbaugh has already left behind and push it to the next level, get the most out of Jackson, get the most out of that offense, get the most out of that defense, and leave it all on the field so that if the Ravens do lose again, it's, well, not for we didn't try, we just got outplayed. And it's as simple as that. I think not just talking about Jesse Minter going up the board, I think Anthony Weaver is also really high on the board. I know several other teams are interviewing him, and I think the Ravens organization really likes him as having been in the organization before, and they're very apt to bring in people that they trust and they know. So I'm looking right now, I feel like the number 1 and 2 between the Ravens for head coach is Jesse Minter, and Anthony Weaver really is who they're looking at. I'd still want Brian Flores in the conversation. I would throw in Clint Kubiak too, but we'll see. The search continues. I think this process is going to take at least another week, if not 2 more weeks to go on. I wouldn't expect anything anytime soon, and the Ravens really aren't releasing that much, so there's not much to talk about. Where these other teams, stuff gets leaked and sort of let out. This team is keeping very internal, which I do love that about the team, that they're keeping this very internal right now and not wanting to discuss it. But there's not much news other than who have the Ravens brought in for a second interview, who have they brought in for a first interview, and that's the thoughts. That's all they're saying right now, which makes it a little harder to talk over, but we can always give our opinions, and I'd love to hear all of your opinions on who you think would be a great fit for the Ravens' next head coach. Leave it down in the comments. I love responding. I want to talk and engage more. I respond to the people who comment, so keep it up. Now, I've got some news about this recently and been hearing people talk about it. It's going all around Vegas, and people are talking about it, that Lamar Jackson is going to get traded. He's taking up too much of a cap space. The Ravens are going to move on from him. He's going to go to the Raiders or wherever. I really don't like that I think it's an off-season rumor. I think it really is truly, it is the off-season coming up here soon. You have the Super Bowl in 3 weeks now, and there's not too much football left, and so people are trying to get the ball starting to roll on things to talk about in the off-season, and that what. And one of the things they're looking at is, what's a great rumor to spread around? And Ravens are going to get rid of Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's going anywhere. I really don't think he's going anywhere. If the Ravens traded him before June 1st and the start of the next season, the Ravens would incur an $86 million dead cap. So it's not going to happen before then. Now, if he was traded after, it would be $22 million dead cap, which is a lot better. But the draft has already happened at that point, and what team is wanting to trade for a quarterback at that time? Especially the Ravens, when the draft has already happened, and if you don't have a number 1 quarterback in that back spot, you're screwed if you now trade your number 1 quarterback away. And I don't think the Ravens are going to do that. I think the Ravens have a lot of confidence in Lamar, and Bisciotti and DaCosta already talked over this. Bisciotti said that Lamar was his quarterback, and that DaCosta and Lamar were talking, and that they were going to wait um for the extension or re-signing for the offseason, and talking about that in the offseason. And I think that's going to be happening currently and right now. In trading away Harbaugh, well, not trading away, but letting Harbaugh go, the Ravens are really looking at Lamar and saying, he is our answer. We have the confidence in him. He can succeed under multiple head coaches. And not only that, Lamar's advice and opinion is being asked in the search for a new head coach. You're not going to be asking Lamar, who do you think the next head coach should be? What's your opinion on this? If there's not an sort of already feeling that he is going to be staying here for the future. So I think he stays. I think people who spread this rumor are just trying to create a conversation to just talk about, and there's not really much beyond that. I don't think he goes anywhere. He is the Ravens quarterback. He is the franchise quarterback. Yes, will his next contract be large again? He deserves it. We're going to see a few more years at least with Lamar as the Ravens quarterback. Now, talking about that brings me into my next segment. Really great is that as much as fixing that cap space by extending Lamar is needed, I talked about in last episode, free agency, the Ravens that are leaving, the 24 free agents, 19 unrestricted. Ravens got to start looking towards this right now. Other teams are hungry, and they're looking at that Ravens free agent class and going, yum, 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 yum. Who do we want to pick up from them? Who can we take away? Again, I said there's some definite re-signings. I think teams are going to be targeting to try and take away Linderbaum from the Ravens, take Patrick Ricard away from the Ravens. I would not be surprised to see multiple teams targeting, likely, especially teams that need a tight end that is stretching the field vertically. Wouldn't be surprised. Keith Mitchell and multiple others. And the Ravens just need to start looking at this and going, we need to tie it up now. I addressed this in the last episode and who the Ravens should really re-sign. Obvious key points: Tyler Linderbaum, Patrick Ricard, I think defensive end, Durante Jones. These need re-signings and bringing them back in and keeping them. And if you want more depth in on that, I recommend please go back, listen to that previous episode. But my point is, the Ravens need to start looking towards these players, talking about contract extensions, talking about re-signing them, so that when these hungry teams start coming in, the Ravens already have multiple that can say, just like Ronnie Stanley last year and how the Ravens screwed up the Chiefs' plan of trying to take Ronnie Stanley away from the Ravens reportedly, that they have multiple players that when that free agency hits and the re-signings happen, that they can say, nope, we are staying a Raven. They are a Raven. Here's who's left on free agency. You guys can try and pick at it, but we have our key fundamental pieces we wanted to keep out of it. And DaCosta agreed with this, that they really like keeping their established players and that they need several key re-signings. But just because the Ravens are going to try and re-sign players, and definitely the Ravens are going to be targeting others in the free agency, especially from other teams, that you don't just build a team through free agency and re-signing, because the Ravens went into this past season with almost an identical roster to the previous season, where the Ravens succeeded and made it deep into the playoffs before losing in an unfortunate manner. divisional round, but they're coming in with a very similar team this past year and didn't succeed. Well, yes, coaching, but you also are needing to build this team through the draft. Now, I think the draft candidates from last year, there were multiple home runs that were a home run that was like Teddy Buchanan. He's a home run. Great player, plays like Raven, gonna stay on the team, has helped fill the depth on the linebacking chart like no business. Mike Green, I think, doing really well. Malachi Starks is doing really well. So there's pieces there from the past draft that are going to continue forward. But this draft needs to address some of the issues that are facing the Ravens. So since I did not do my full chart of draft picks, I'm just focusing in on the first round today and what the Ravens should be, in my opinion, looking for in the first round. And when looking at the Ravens in the first round, I agree with what DeCosta said, is focusing on the trenches. You really need to be looking at the trenches because that's where the Ravens failed very hard last year. And they need the depth and they need young talent that can be brought up, developed, and continue to go forward. And I think there's some talent there already. I mean, on the offensive line, if you can keep Linderbaum, you have three pieces. That's a solid group to work around between the tackles and the center. And there's talent on the pass rush that can be kept. Mike Green, I believe, will continue to develop further and will show a lot more success. And as you add pieces around him, his success will only grow because of that. And the secondary, I think, has a lot of pieces already on it. Just needs some players to step up further, and like Nate Wiggins and Trenton Simpson and others, that success will happen there. But when I say trenches, I'm talking specifically the guards and defensive tackles. Now, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me that the Ravens need to focus on pass rush and on the edge. And I agree, depth needs to be added there. But I think depth can be added there first in the free agency. I went into this last week that there's multiple players that can be brought in, like Joey Bosa and others that can add depth there, that are older, established talent that the Ravens like going after, even Clowney, that they can bring some of that back and help a year or two while the Ravens draft further and bring in young talent that can be developed up. And I'm not saying that the Ravens shouldn't draft edge this year. I think they definitely need defensive ends and edge rushing. But I think that can come in later rounds. When I'm looking at this draft class, there's really two critical important pieces that I look at. That first off, you really need to get depth at guard. You let Fa'alele walk, and you could even talk about trading for Emory Jones Jr. is going to need to step up. And the Ravens could definitely make trades that help with the O-line. But drafting a guard in the first round that has a high floor and can raise the floor of the Ravens line immediately would make a great impact and help the offense succeed so much more. Or on the other side of the ball, defensive tackles and that there's uncertainty and no guarantee that Madubuike is going to be playing next year right now, that the news is still very silent on him, and I wish him a full recovery and that he gets very healthy and can have a very successful career continuing at the Ravens. But there's doubt there. And so I think in the first round, the Ravens really need to be focusing either on guard or on defensive tackle. And I guess I would also say, if players are still available, wide receiver would be another option in here, and edge is another option. If the Ravens really feel, and the organization really feels, that player right there, that they just can't pass up on him at number 14, because the Ravens have the 14th overall pick. But I think there will be multiple edges picked ahead of the Ravens that are higher in the first round talent. And when it comes down to it, who's left at that, I would rather take defensive tackles and guards there first, or guard there first to shore up the glaring holes there, which could be possibly harder to fill in free agency. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because defensive tackle, you can bring in Calais Campbell, and Jalen Phillips is also there. And I talked about guard Kevin Zeitler again. But those are the two that focus on first, and you could think about wide receiver and edge if the talent is there and it's really valued first. But I'm going to go into some of the defensive tackles, and I know I'm going to say these, and a lot of people are going to be like, well, yeah, those are the only names there, and that's what everyone else is saying. And really, when you're this high in the first round, there's only so much talent that's up there. And so everyone's going to be saying a lot of the same things, because there's only so many players that are up there that are worth picking at number 14 and in the higher first round picks. And so when you're in the latter half of the first round, yeah, you can take a few more speculations, because there's people at the beginning of the second round that maybe the team really highly values that they would take in the first round, versus those that just sit there at the start of the first round, because that's really what you have to take with the value that's there. And if you pass up on them, you're passing up and possibly screwing the value of the pick you have. So first, defensive tackle, I think Peter Woods, Clemson defensive tackle. He's 6'3". He weighs 315 pounds. His previous season, he had 30 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. A lot of people are going to say, hey, well, he had a regression between his past year and the year before. And yes, he did, but Clemson altogether had a regression. He could stayed one of the more consistent pieces on it. I think as a development piece, there's a lot of raw talent right there. He's very explosive off the snap, and very violent there. He's got versatility. I think he could be one who has both the versatility to help in the pass rush and the run stop. He's got good natural leverage. He can be a consistent piece for the Ravens, I believe. And I think he has a higher ceiling. Now, he may have a lower floor, but I think he has a very high ceiling. And I think people would argue he has a lower floor after this past season, but what the Ravens could develop out of him would be worth it there. And he has the power and the foundations to work off of to develop. And if Matabuki can't come back, he could be the next one in there that gets both pass rush and run stopping and works on both, and just adds explosiveness to that defense and the aggressiveness back in. Now, I think maybe he could lose a little weight. I know he gained 10 pounds from the previous season to this past season, and that sort of slowed him down a little bit. So maybe his better weight would, instead of being 315, be 305. But I think overall he would be a great pick right there. And I know there's argument over whether or not you take a defensive tackle in the first round, because you could find it in later depths and later rounds and get good pieces. But I think if there's anyone that could have an immediate impact on the team and just play bully ball on the defensive line, it could definitely be Peter Woods. I think Caden McDonald could also be an argument here from OSU. He is also 6'3". He weighs 326 pounds. This past season, he had 65 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. He is not as much in the pass rush. He is definitely more of an early down anchor. He gets double teamed a lot, but he definitely handles them extremely well as a block shedder, and that I think he needs development at the pass rush. And I would argue to say the role he would be coming in would definitely be a little more similar to Travis Jones. Jones was the one that was getting consistently double teamed this year at nose tackle. And I think he could be a great player, and he definitely has a very high floor right now. A high floor, I would say a little lower ceiling than Peter Woods, but he could be a great piece. And I mean, Peter Woods is expected right around where the Ravens are, and Caden McDonald's expected a little later in the first round, I think in the 20s. So you'd be stretching a little farther forward with him, but he's still the other one that the Ravens would consider, because those are really the two top ones that you would consider in the first round drafting at the 14th overall pick. Looking at interior offensive line, because if you're drafting offensive line, you're drafting a guard. And there's really only one in the first round that you look at and go, ooh, well, he's the only one there, and that is Vega Iona. He's from Penn State. He weighs 330 pounds. He's 6'4". He's a great physical specimen. Has a great foundation, has good power and hands. He's really versatile in the run. I think he has a really high floor that the Ravens could use. And if you put him in there next to Linderbaum, I think that offensive line really takes shape and looks a lot better, especially on the run, which is not saying a lot because the Ravens' run looked pretty good last year anyways, regardless of that. But I think he would just help improve it so much more. Now, he can definitely stunt in pass rushes and everything. He recovers a little slow sometimes, but he definitely needs development there on the pass rush a little more. But the floor is there. And if there was anyone that the Ravens were going to draft in the first round for guard, it would be him. And he's really the only one there, in my opinion, that the Ravens would draft at number 14. Because a lot of the later guards are expected more in the second round. And if you're trying to get value out of this pick, it's got to be him. Now, I put wide receiver in as the third most important in the first round because weapons are needed for Lamar. And I'll be honest, with Zay Flowers, he's a great player. I think Zay Flowers is a great wide receiver. And it's shown these past few years having over 1,000-yard receiving seasons. And talks are in of whether or not Zay gets extended already. But depth is needed there and more talent is needed there because your next up is Rashad Bateman. And then your tight ends. At what point are you going to say getting older wide receivers to help try and boost this receiving core isn't working anymore, and you need some younger talent that's going to come in, stay for a long time and develop and just have that immediate impact that helps Lamar and takes that offense to the next level? And I think at wide receiver, you're looking from USC, Mekhi Lemon. He's 195 pounds, 5'11". He's a great route runner, has great speed, really good technique there too at creating separation and just knowing these little finesse moves to create that separation. And you think, oh, well, another route runner who's got good speed and create separation. No, we already have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, even though Bateman is inconsistent when it comes to health. Where Mekhi could really help the Ravens is in the 50-50 ball situations. He's got great body control and timing in these situations and could be that X factor contested catch receiver that the Ravens need and have been looking for and been trying to bring in by bringing in older receivers like DeAndre Hopkins and OBJ that just haven't really panned out fully for what Ravens were expecting or wanting. Flashes were there, but not there the entire season. Mekhi could be that difference maker. I think he's a great look for the Ravens to look at. Now, I have to say honorable mentions because as much as I say those are the top three, the Ravens can definitely be looking at edge or even cornerback in the first round. If they are looking at linebacker, I am going to be sorely disappointed because I think the linebacking core is set there between Roquan Smith, Eddie Buchanan, Trenton Simpson, and those back there. I don't think much more is needed back there, and they're solidified there. But if you're looking at edge and cornerback, depth could definitely be used there. Additions could be used there. And if the players are there, you may debate taking them. I don't think all of them will be there, like Ruben Bain Jr., edge from Miami, Florida. He goes high up. I don't think he's going to be there. But if these players are there, you debate taking them between Ruben Bain Jr., Cassius Howe, TJ Parker, David Bailey, or Folk. You could argue towards them. I just don't think the Ravens take an edge in the first round when you already have Mike Green and are going to be developing him, and you need better help elsewhere. With considering the facts of what's going on with health situations and looking at the offensive line and free agency, you look towards those positions first, and then at cornerback, you could be looking at McCoy or Terrell, these guys out of Tennessee and Clemson. We'll see how it goes. We'll go further into depth on these and we'll get a full board going here soon. But that's all I had for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed listening and will continue to come back. Please, if you're on YouTube, like the video, leave a comment. If you're not subscribed, please comment, share the video. It's how this community grows. If you're on Spotify, follow the podcast and leave a review and any comments. I will respond to comments. I thank you all so much for joining, and I promise I will get this entire draft board finished up here soon, and one day we will have a full conversation about every single pick that the Ravens can make, and I would also like to do some mock drafts on the podcast coming up next too. And I'd just like to thank everyone for stopping by and joining in. I'm your host, Alex, and thank you for listening to the Purple Breakdown, a Baltimore Ravens podcast, a podcast that covers the Baltimore Ravens. I'll catch you all next time.